I would like to start this by saying that before these events I had never encountered the Slenderman in many stories, just 2 or 3. The Rake, however, is a different matter entirely. This started in December of 2010. I had just discovered creepypasta style stories through a friend of mine. She refused to let me give her name, so in true internet fashion I will refer to her as Herb. Herb showed me the classic Rake video where he ran through the bushes for a split second. Now, I loved that video. I watched it several more times before a comment linked me to 4chan. Now, I never knew of the site before, but I never knew of this site. This is what led me to finding all sorts of creepypastas. Now, after about a month of this, I got tired of it. One thread had anchored text reading simply, "The Rake." I clicked it and it brought me to YouTube. The Rake's first sighting video. But this was a different user. The user had only videos about the Rake. It had Vicious516's videos and Mr. Creepypasta's videos. I loved it. After spending more of my life watching all these Rake videos, I found myself obsessed. I wanted to know if he was real, if the Rake actually existed. So I did as my teenager does when they want to know something, I googled it. Lo and behold, I found account after account of the Rake. Now, I'm not stupid. Well, that's debatable, but I'm not easily fooled. I knew most of these were bogus, but on all the ones with comments attached, I saw a recording commenter. A guy by the name of Slenderman. Always that name, no matter what website it was, he would correct people. Actually tell people the details that were wrong. Things like, "Nice story, but you can't go that fast," or "I love it." A word of advice though, his claws are a foot long, not 11 inches. This guy seemed for real. So I looked for him. It was hard as his name was the same as a troll pasta. Rule 34 Slenderman. Some weird shit for sure. But I finally found a blog by a guy of the same name. He had been posting about the Rake for a while, and I noticed something. Something was really realistic. At least, not by what we say is real, but it sure as hell was believable. I sent him a few emails about the Rake. Emphasis on few, it took him a while before he responded. All his email said was, "He is legit." I assume he was the Rake. I told Herb and she said that it was just some crazy guy, someone more obsessed than me. Herb always looked down on my love for the Rakes. She thought I would let sleeping dogs lie, but dumb old me wanted to poke him with a stick. I wanted to know if the Rake was real. Just that. I sent out an email back to Slenderman asking if he had proof. If there was any cold hard evidence that the Rake was real. A picture or a video or something. It had been a few long months before I even got a response. This time, it was an address. I knew the location, a coffee shop that was very popular in my town. My initial thought was, now how the fuck did he know I live here? But I wanted to go, and I brought Herb with me. We showed up the next day around noon when traffic started to pick up. I remember Herb saying it was so rude of him not to leave a time for us to show up. We had no idea how he would know who Slenderman was, much less if he even was there. It's not like in the movies. I can't just walk up to the counter and ask if there was reservations in the name of Slenderman. Aside from being completely weird, it would also be illogical. There were no reservations at a freaking coffee shop. We did, however, know when Slenderman walked through the door. He looked about 20 years old and was wearing a Mr. CreepyPasta Storytime t-shirt. Me and Herb approached him and asked if he was in fact Slenderman. He confirmed it and handed me a disposable camera. I was excited, needless to say, and so was Herb. That surprised me. I asked her later about this and she just said it was like being spies or something. I looked away from the camera to think Slenderman, but he was gone. Not like the eerie, he disappeared, oh my god. No, he was just there. Walked away. Herb and I went to Walgreens to develop the photos at one of those 1 hour photo places. While we waited, we discussed the Rake. How could Slenderman get photos of him? If the Rake was a ghost or a demon or something, and most important, if he was real, then what other creepypastas were? The talking kept us occupied for the 37 minutes it took for him to develop the images. The man behind the counter handed over the pictures of a piece of paper on top. I asked what it was that he wrapped around the film. The paper was a note written in black Sharpie. These are photos of him as you requested. I took them knowing it would cost me my safety. He does not like to be photographed, and he will also come after you if he finds out you have these. Do not publish these images. Signed, Slenderman. The pictures were, as promised, pictures of the Rake. Herb was uneasy by the letter and begged me to burn the pictures, to just end it. But me? Well, I was not going to do that. The world had to know. It had to. Everyone needed to know. So I posted one of the pictures all over the internet, on DeviantArt, Reddit, CreepyPasta, and of course, the image sites. Herb at this point was paranoid of the Rake. The pictures were real, so how did we know the warning was not real? I was willing to risk my life so people knew about this. Weeks went by with no change. Herb was on edge in school, and more so after school. She started to see things. Like, she said she saw shadows moving at night, and she said she saw lots of dead animals. So I offered her to stay at my house. My parents knew me and Herb had been friends since we were kids, and they loved having her over, so she stayed the night. It was Friday and we stayed up late. Everything seemed fine. But then, right around 9 PM, Herb said something strange. Did you hear that? Like scratching along the window. I looked at the window. No, and I don't say anything but that stupid tree. Maybe it rubbed on the window. We aren't safe. We will never be safe. You shouldn't have put those pictures online. What makes you say that? Think really hard about why you said there was such a scratch. It's just a tree and the winds. You don't have a tree in your front yard. I got scared. Herb was right. I didn't have a tree there. Slowly, I stood and walked over to the window. I put my hand on the glass and looked out. There was a shadow on the ground. A shadow of something on 4 legs that looked very much like a human. And he had claws. The Rake looked back at me. I whispered to Herb that I mistook the claws for a branch, but I was wrong, yet again. The Rake dashed off and I was scared to the bone. We didn't sleep. That might not have to be said. We stayed away all night with my air rifles loaded with a copper BBs. The Rake never showed up. Fast forward to the next night, we couldn't stay awake another night in a row. As 16-year-olds, it was not physically possible without some energy drinks, something my mom swears will kill your liver because of all the nasty toxic stuff in them. We crashed at about 8 o'clock. It was the best damn 4 hours I've ever slept. I dreamed about when I was a kid playing on the playground without my parents. I was just a rebel like that as a kid. I say 4 hours because I woke up to the sound of scratching on my window. "It's outside," I whispered to Herb. "No," she mouthed. I glanced at my window without moving. My window sits opposite my bed, so it was a bit of a strain. There, right the fuck there, was the Rake running his claws against my windows from the inside. I screamed. What else could I do? The Rake pounced, jumped at me and reared back his claw. I thought I was dead. But he stopped. Some impossibly black force had hit the Rake, smack in the face before he got me, and sent him sprawling on the floor. I had no fucking clue what that force was. Now I know. Those branches were fingers. The tree I never had was a body. The Rake hadn't opened the window, he just smashed it. Something else wanted to be in my room. When I looked up, I knew who it was. I read a story about this figure. The figure was tall and had no face. The Slenderman. The Rake was quick to recover. He hoisted himself up and lunged back at the Slenderman. A black tendril slammed into the Rake's ribs and made a loud crack. The Rake hit the floor on his back and rolled to his feet. He was cautious now, and like a lion he began walking slowly in an arch around Slenderman. Herb inched out of bed and tried to run. I hadn't noticed until I heard that scream. The blood-curdling shriek of my best friend getting attacked by the monster. The Rake got a few swipes at her, but Slenderman, for whatever reason, wanted her not to die and pulled the Rake off. I remember reading about him, being ruthless and eating children. He never protected them. The Rake gave a swipe at Slenderman's arm, and it looked as if it simply fell through him. Slenderman started pulling at the Rake's arm while he held his body. It was like he was pulling apart a doll. After the first pop, I snapped out of my awe. The Rake, despite being a monster, was something I was deeply attached to. I couldn't let Slenderman kill him. "Stop! Don't do it!" Slenderman looked at me. Well, he pointed his head at me. "You can't rip his arms off, or kill him." To do this, Slenderman's head cocked a bit of confusion. "Okay, I thank you for helping me, but I can't let you kill the thing I spent so long chasing. I wanted him to be real, and now that I know he is, you just can't take him." There was a long silence. Slenderman dropped the Rake and turned to me. He moved slowly and reached out of his left arm. I was horrified. His fingers wrapped around my face and then black. I awoke the next morning in the hospital room. Not for me. It was for Herb. She was badly hurt with multiple cuts along her face and chest. I was upset about my friend being hurt, but I would be lying if I said I was upset about the events that night. I not only got paid off for a long period of work, but I also saw proof that CreepyPasta aren't based off fiction. Slenderman and the Rake are real. I haven't seen the Slenderman since. I saw evidence of him everywhere. That tree that isn't supposed to be there. The dreams of a suited man on a playground. I even see him in old photos of me. Slenderman must have been following me for years. I asked my mom about the shadows that appeared only in the pictures of me. She just smiled and said, "Me and your dad used to call that your angel. It only ever appears in pictures of you." Funny, but I hadn't thought of that in years. As for the Rake, I haven't seen him for a long time. I kinda miss the thrill of chasing him. I miss knowing he was out there without proof. Maybe he will come back.